I'd like to share some brief words of Torah with you about this week's Parsha, Parshat Matot. The Parsha records a dialogue between two tribes, the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuven, wherein they approach Moshe and they say, Moshe Rabbeinu, although Israel is special to us, we've decided to remain here, on the other side of the Jordan. For you see, we have a lot of cattle, lots of livestock, sheep, cows, etc. And there's much more room for them to graze here, feed here, and it makes more sense for us to live here. Moshe, what do you say? And the language that they use is very interesting, and Rashi makes note of it. And the pasuk says, "Vayikshu elav vayomru gijos tzon nivnei lemeknenu po ve'arim letapenu." We will build corrals for our sheep, for our cattle here, and we will build cities, fortified cities for our families, for our children. Moshe ultimately responds to them, Benu lachem arim letapechem. Build cities for your children. Ugdeiros litzonchem, and build corrals for your sheep. V'yayotze mipichem ta'asu, and that which you promised, go ahead and keep. Because there were certain conditions that allowed them to stay on that side of the Jordan. Rashi points out a fascinating idea. Rashi says that they had a greater level of pity and concern for their money than they did for their own children. It was almost what we call nowadays a Freudian slip, wherein they said, let us build, let us stay here for our cattle, and oh yeah, we'll build cities for our children too. And Moshe says, no, you're making a mistake. You are making a mistake. Lo keinasu ha'ikar ve'atafel tafel. That which is primary should remain primary, and that which is secondary should remain secondary. It's not as important. Don't confuse that which is important with that which is not as important. So the question is really obvious. How can the Dordeya, these wonderful, great, very highly spiritual people, make such a mistake? How can they put their livelihood before their own families? How can they make the mistake that so many of us make today? Well, don't you think we should hold them to a higher standard? The answer that I saw is an interesting one. It's one that's really worthy of consideration and thinking about in terms of me and you. Originally, the reason why they went into the business of raising cattle is to provide for their families. Their motivating concern was their families. As it happened, and the way it often works in business, they spent more time focused, more energy spent on their animals than they did with their families. Why? In order to provide for their families. Ultimately, what happened is they began to see the animals for the sake of the animals themselves. The means became an end in and of itself. They forgot on some level that the real goal was their families. Thus, it seemed to Moshe, through their Freudian slip again, that their concern for their concern for their animals overrode their concern for their families. And Moshe was trying to set their priorities straight. May we indeed have our priorities straight. May we indeed keep primary that which is important and relegate that which is unimportant to just being secondary, and perhaps even focus more time and energy on our family than we do on our business. Have a wonderful day. Have a Shabbat Shalom.